trying to determine that the government is making progress in encouraging confidence of the private sector in its ability to deliver in some of these arrangements?
Thank you very much. The role of government, as you pointed out, resource allocation is probably one of the most challenging things that government is involved in. It's very clear that government cannot do everything. But what we're seeing is that our role must evolve. And public-private partnership is a key area in which we can play. We can create, there are public goods that only government can provide, like the provision of roads and security and the things you see. But there are also public goods that government can partner with the private sector to provide. And I think we've made a lot of progress. I think there is a need to push the envelope. Private-public partnership in Nigeria is still at a nascent stage. And I think what we need to do is take a little bit more risk so that we can move into areas like agriculture, like urban development. And Chief Onabanjo asked of free land. Well, the closest we can get to free land is probably working in a PPP structure whereby, okay, you don't have to pay for your land up front, so that reduces your costs and makes your project more bankable. But we can't give free land. We will need to exit those investments as time goes on. I think the other role of government potentially is providing proof of concept. I think in terms of agriculture and indeed urban development, everybody can see the potential, but it's very risky to go out there and be the first person to push the envelope. So one of the things I think government can do is working with the private sector to show that these businesses or these ideas are viable and are bankable, and that will attract further investment from the private sector.
Before I invite audience participation, let me just come back to the World Bank. Just looking at on the back of global experience, especially when you're talking about a subnational government such as Ogun is, I wonder what would be your own thoughts as to some of those things that you would like the Ogun State government to be thinking about or doing in trying to stimulate or catalyze the kinds of, at least solving some of the problems that we have had set out for us this morning.
I think that, as I said at the beginning, Ogun has a lot of potential. So I think that my first recommendation to the government would be to articulate a clear strategy posing and presenting these advantages that the state has. Secondly, I would suggest, actually, like President Fox mentioned, that around this value chain that you would identify, that you perhaps organize an advisory board, for example, bringing the public sector, the private sector, and, for example, the farmers in the case of agriculture, to identify where are the problems. Why is it that the processing capacity is only utilized at 30%? There must be a problem. In the case of rice, when we say that at the same time there is a deficit of rice and we are importing. So having this platform would then help identify what is it the government needs to do, what is it the private sector would need to do. So thirdly, I think that the private sector, I hear free lunch, I mean, my sense is that there is never a free lunch. What the private sector is looking at, and I had the opportunity to discuss with private operators that are looking at Ogun, it's really clarity and stability of the regulatory framework, of the legal framework and the regulatory framework. Talking about land, how easy, it's not so much, give me free land. People want a title. How much time does it take to obtain a land title? How much time does it take to obtain a certificate of occupancy? At which cost? So, for example, if the state would clarify this type of procedures and perhaps said, we will reduce taxes, we look at that, and I will just use the opportunity because I have not spoken too much of housing, but I want to say a couple of words on that. If you have this clarity, then the private sector will invest, and we can have what Kemi is saying, maybe first two examples that can be then extended. And finally, I think that my conversation with the private sector shows that the capacity gap is still important. So I would suggest that maybe the government assess which kind of capacity that do we have, both at the level of farmers, but what we say is that what the market is demanding is not traditional agriculture, it's processed food. So what are the skills that we need to do this transformation that will help have the product that the market demands? In my view, if the government would do that, you will have the clear vision, the critical step, and all this issue of financing will become much clearer because the private sector knows what is in place. Let me add, in terms of the housing, that, for example, our sister company, the IFC, started to work with the government to see how indeed to illustrate to have a development in Ogun, not close to Lagos, as a demonstration effect. But we see again the issues are how do you organize in terms of the legal framework, how much time does it take to set up a business, which type of other taxes do you have to pay. Simplification is of essence. In terms of our colleague from the bank, Segun, the mismatch of the financing, we agree with that. And actually, the World Bank is working with the government to establish a mortgage refinancing facility precisely to establish this mortgage market. You cannot fund houses with funding at 6 months to 1 year. So the NMRC has been created. We hope that with this instrument, we can help the government mobilize resources, long-term financing, that will then be on lend to primary bank mortgage institution, and at the same time, it will then create the demand to construct these houses that are needed. And I would therefore invite the government of Ogun to look into it so that it can be a prime beneficiary of this facility that is identified. Again, because we know that there is a lot of demand of housing. There is a solvent market. People are looking for houses, especially those who are moving to Lagos to work.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Now, like I said, we'll go into a very short audience participation. If there are any questions, we'll kind of take 3-4 questions. Please write them down and hand the questions to the ushers. It's the first 4 questions that kind of get to me that will get asked. Now, whilst that's going on, I've been asked to invite the panelists for the second plenary session to please meet in the foyer now. The panelists for the next plenary session to please meet in the foyer now. Any of the ushers, any of the questions here yet? Sorry? Oh, right. Wow. Even though my eyes are being aided by a pair of glasses, the distance between myself and that screen means somebody has to help me. So, what? I don't think that's for us.
Let me help you out.
Please.
Trade imbalance between Africa and the Western world has been a challenge. What policy options are available to overturn this? Oh, sorry. Dotun Akinrule. Trade imbalance between Africa and the Western world has been a challenge. What policy options are available to overturn this?
I suspect you might have to write an essay in answering that one. I'm looking for questions that are directly relevant to agriculture and urban development.
Okay, can I have the next question? They'll get back to that question. Take a few hours to write the 5-page answer. Here we go.
Well, whilst the Chief Ogbe, you wish to...
Well, sorry, it's a very huge topic to deal with, but let's put it this way.
Okay, let's go back to the last question, right?
Yes. I mean, since the Structural Adjustment Program of 1986, Nigeria has declined very severely in industrial output, and we've become what they call a consumer nation. So we import everything, including toothpicks and tomato paste and pencils for our children, some 18 million children in primary schools. We don't make pencils here. They come from Hong Kong, China, and what have you. President Fox said it earlier. We have to industrialize. We have to produce more at home. We will sell and we will buy. as at now, we buy too much